we're going to talk about freelancing and working from home. So thanks for joining us. I want to do another one of these story chats because, uh, well, if you don't know who I am, I'm Sergio Paez, and I'm an animation director and storyboard artist, one of the founding members of storyboardart.org. So streaming to you live on Facebook, Instagram, and we're going to post this on other social media platforms. So we've been doing a series of these, and I love it. I love connecting with you guys and making sure that we can talk about these things and make it fun and relevant. So I want to talk today about freelancing tips working from home because that's what we're doing right now with basically the coronavirus lockdown. People are at home, they're working at their studios, and maybe this could be the first time you're actually doing this kind of stuff. So I want to give you a couple tips about that and how to make it really productive if you are working at home. First off, let me get my Cintiq pen, right? So uh, I wanted to show you my setup a little bit. Like for those of you guys where we're beaming, you can see my camera set up and my bookshelf in the background, and I got my desk set up. I have a Cintiq monitor, which is just a fancy digital screen that you can draw on, right? And what that does is it lets you to use all the digital programs and all the tools. This is connected to a PC. It's a pretty beefy like gaming PC that I have with a really strong video card, and I also have a second monitor that you can see back here. Let me see. Let me tilt the camera a little bit so you guys can see that a little bit better. Okay. So this is basically my home office setup. I also have a traditional drawing table where I work at, and I got my mascot, my mascot Richard, who always joins me. And he comes up here and he like hangs out at the desk sometimes. So, and I also got my Yoda sign, which says, do or do not, there is no try, right? It's just a reminder that we got to make the most out of our productive time as we're working on our studio. So let me get rid of Richard here. Thanks for the cameo by my friend. Um, okay, a couple tips when you're working at home. For one, okay, you got to have your basic setup. Like I said, this is connected to a pretty strong PC. It's got some good RAM. I have my Adobe CC package. I also have Toon Boom. I have TV Paint. I have Autodesk Sketchbook. These are all kind of my go-to programs that I use when I'm doing my storyboards, right? Now you may not have this kind of setup. This took me a long time to actually set this up really well. My Cintiq monitor is on an arm that I got on Amazon, which is really cool, and I can move this around and just manipulate how I'm doing my workflow. I got a pull-out keyboard on my desk, and I'm actually an ultra organized guy. I really like to keep things clean and make sure everything has a place for that. So that's going to be my first tip. One is get organized. I find people's studios, you go in there, it's a cluttered mess, and you don't know where anything is, right? And that really, to me, is a no-no. When you get down to work, you got to make sure that you are absolutely productive, and you know where your files are on your computer, you know where your paper should be on your desk, like all of that. It should be like ready to go. Okay, that's really an easy thing to solve. The other thing that I think is really important when you're working at home is the distractions. All right, you got to minimize your distractions when you're at home. So think about if you're at a studio environment. Now let's talk a little bit about what you would do in a studio environment. One of the things that you would do is that you have to arrive at a certain time. Now, I guess we have the luxury in animation and kind of the tech world where people kind of roll in at 10 a.m. in the morning, or like if they don't have any meetings, you can kind of just work your way to the studio. It's not necessarily like banking hours and stuff. Uh, I have done that. I used to do that, and I think that's an error in my ways that I want to correct. And the guys that I've worked with that have been the most productive and this is like universal. I worked in many countries, and I've seen this also the same thing, where people are really they're really disciplined about when they arrive to the studio and how they get there. And the guys that get there early can get a lot done because they get there early, and they don't have like the hustle and bustle of everybody else around them in the studio. And you just get there, and then you can like sit down and get to work. You don't have to check email or anything like that. You can set up what you're doing from the day before and actually work in the morning. So getting up early and getting to the studio is something that the most productive people do, right? So now how do we apply this at at home? What are we going to do for our home studio? The same rules apply. Like people get up really lazily at home because they don't have to actually be anywhere. And you might think, okay, this is great. I can work in my underwear and go to my studio or get my desk set up. I don't even take a shower. They barely have breakfast. And so really what happens in the morning is just you just let it go by and you might have to eat something. And at that point, you blew the whole morning. That's really, really bad. That's not a good tip to do. So my recommendation, I've been doing this for the last couple of years and been much more disciplined about it. Now, other guys are way better at it than me. I have actually have a difficult time waking up extremely early in the morning. I can wake up a good like 6 and 7 a.m. is usually the time I wake up. But by like 8 and 9 a.m., I'm at my desk and I am drawing. I'm actually creating work. The first thing I usually do when I sit down at my desk is I check my email messages to make sure there's nothing urgent. And I'll get to email in a second because that's another tip I want to tell you about from working at home or working really in the studio. It goes for anywhere, like productivity tips. But the idea is that you don't loosen up your discipline just because you're working at home. So set a schedule, and even if you have family or you have other distractions, you really need to minimize this stuff. And I've been through all of it. Okay, so one tip is that if you have the space, if you have the luxury to have like a studio set up in a room or maybe a corner of your bedroom or something, that you have somewhere you can shut the door and you can lock out any of the distractions. So you might live with other people, roommates, family members, your wife, your kid, everything like that might be in your studio setup. That's okay. But one thing that is really important is that you're up in the morning, you sit down to work, and you're at your desk for the period of time as if you're in the studio. So think about it from like 9 to 12 is your morning block. You take a break for lunch at like 12 to 1, right? And then eat something, right? Take a little bit of a break. You might browse the internet or check your messages and stuff. Then you go back to work for that afternoon block. Usually the afternoon block, you take that in two sections, or at least I do. I'll go from about 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., have a little like coffee break or a snack. Then for 15 minutes, half an hour, whatever it is. If you're working at home and you have other people there, especially now where like coronavirus, most everybody is at home on the lockdown. So what you want to do is converse and make sure that you're being a little bit social while you're at home. But then you're back to work after that. So 3:34, you're at your desk and you go 4 to 6, 4 to 7. And by that time, you're probably really hungry and you want to you want to have dinner at that time. And if you've been productive during the day, like a full 8 hours sitting at your desk, you may not always be drawing something and creating some cool artwork as you're drawing at your desk, because you might get interrupted by email and other things like that, phone calls and some other like office stuff. Um, but if you get a good 6 hours in, you're doing good. If you get 4 hours in, you're probably doing good. 4 hours of actual production work, you're doing really good. If you can get six, great. Now I've done crunch time where like you still have those like 1 2 hour, I kind of call it wasted time in meetings and phone calls and emails and all that throughout the day, and you still have to execute at like 6 and 7 hours at least of production time, which means you're at the studio or at your home desk till like 9 p.m. and later. So I've done things like that where you got the morning block, which is usually administration, whatever. Afternoon block is sitting down, being productive at your desk, working, and then you might have dinner, take a break, and then you do an evening block, which really is actually quite hard. That builds up, and your productivity slows down a lot because you're tired. Your thinking skills and the quickness of your decision making goes down a little bit because of that evening time, right? So what I do recommend is that you get as much productive time in the morning and get rid of all that distraction. So anybody who's around you, it is really a good idea that you tell them and you express to them in a very diplomatic way that when you're at your desk and at your studio, that is a sacred time that needs to be respected. Okay, now I've had this conversation many times with family members and friends and even parents and stuff that come by my studio, is that when I'm at my desk, I don't want to be interrupted. And it's not that you don't want to be, it's that you don't have the luxury of being interrupted. You have to continue to work and progress. And trust me, you feel better if you do this because you actually get productive work done. And then the other thing that happens is that people slowly over time will start to respect those studio time hours for you. Because, I think it's easy to fall into the trap of like, Oh, is it like you're at your desk, you're drawing, you're creating, you're doing something creative? Oh, let me just come sit down and have a conversation with you. And no, that's bad news. That's the road to distraction and not getting anything done. So what you want to do is make sure those guys respect your time, and also you're not distracted. You're focusing on the work that you're doing. Now there is times where you actually have to take some meetings, and you might do like a Zoom meeting or a Hangout or Skype or whatever. And that's also, I'd consider that productive time because you're talking about story ideas. You might be talking with your client and resolving some issues. But right after that, you get the delivery, you get the info, and you get down to work and you're actually producing some drawings because you're getting paid for the drawings that you're going to produce and making that good. Okay. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Um, Meanwhile, if you have any questions or anything about this stuff, let me know and we'll go over some of that. So the next tip I want to talk about is email and how to handle that because I've also battled with this over the years. It's really hard when you're in the studio environment and in a production because that's the way people communicate is through email and inner office stuff, and you get bombarded with emails all the time. So if you have your email program up on your computer, you're going to get those messages bing, 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 bing that like you got a new message, and some of it might be urgent and some of it might not be. What I usually do is if I'm in my block of production time, I turn off those notifications so it doesn't distract me as I'm working on my computer because you're literally working like at Photoshop and stuff, and then out comes an announcement on your screen which totally takes you out of the moment, especially if it's like from your producer or it might be from your director that needs something. Then you want to service them and make sure that they're getting the attention that they want. So the initial reaction is to jump and do it, right? Do whatever they ask. What you want to do is assess if those emails are really urgent or they can wait till maybe lunchtime or after your break, so you can organize the priority and then answer those particular messages. Um, you can also set things up where that if they have an urgent concern, they can send you a text or a phone call. Because if you're working, you're not going to be able to check your email messages. So the more that you can remove yourself from the email chain, the better. Now, if you're a supervisor and you're in with a production crew, you're not always going to have that luxury. So you do your best in that particular case. What I would do is just that I would prioritize the email messages. And sometimes, like when I was with a team of people and they're asking me a question, I could sometimes, let them know I'm actually busy right now. Can I hit you up in an hour? And then, you kind of delay that message and you can go back and focus. The thing is, here's the real key to this is that when you're in your groove and in your focused work, if somebody takes you out of that thinking process, when you're thinking about storytelling and drawing, it's a really hard thing to do just from the beginning. So you really have to concentrate and sit down and think about what it is that you're drawing. Okay, for somebody to take you out of that, they've done studies and stuff, and I actually agree with kind of the consensus here. If they take you out of your zone, it takes like 10 to 20 minutes to get you back into the zone, right? So that focus time is really kind of difficult to get your mind cleared and get you back into that zone. So to me, the least amount of distractions, the better, right? And certainly like the office chit chat where people come like and they come to your like desk or your cubicle and they start telling you about the weekend and the movie and all that kind of stuff. There's a place for that too, but I also like to limit those things. I actually don't like to do those, um, kind of chit chat stuff. So working at home, you can avoid that, which is actually really nice. The theory about working at home is you can be actually more productive at home than in the studio environment sometimes if you do it right. Okay, so think about that. So if you're in a studio environment and you're going there and people distracting you, you got meetings and stuff. If you're at home and you can focus on actual production work and creating stories and doing your sequence without having all that chit chat, yeah, it's kind of fun. You miss that stuff. I love we go in there. I love talking conspiracies and aliens and whatever government stuff with my coworkers. We get really deep into that. Um, but there's a place and time for that. And usually when the clock is ticking on your production work, you want to put that to the side. So that's something at home you can really take advantage of and get more productive. All right. So this corona virus lockdown thing can be a positive if you think about it, working at home and actually taking advantage of some of those things. Another thing on email I will recommend is that if you prioritize your stuff and you push your email messages later. The other thing that you can do is make sure that the messages that are getting to you are truly urgent. So if you're CC'd on a message and you're like in a group email with like 100 other people, it's usually like an informational email that's not urgent. Those things I either delete or move to another folder, right? And my email is actually very clean. My inbox is super clean. In fact, I always like clean it out and try to get it down to zero by the end of the day, right? And for many people, that's like unheard of. Like they have thousands of emails in their inbox. I've over the years, picked up some tips, and I really like that system of you clear the email and just only things that are important are in there, and everything else you just delete. So don't be checking like Facebook messages. Don't be looking at advertisements if you're on some kind of email list from people selling you shoes and products and Amazon and whatever. Get all that stuff out of your inbox for your work stuff. Do that in your off time, your off work hours. I love that too. It's kind of when you're on your leisure time, you can do whatever. And I'll surf the net and like those conspiracy theories and stuff that I just told you about. I'll go deep down because to me, that's also visual reference that I can use. I'm actually working on an alien movie right now, so this is right up my alley for conspiracies and UFOs and all that alien lore stuff. Okay. Uh, One more thing to think about when you're working at home, and this goes across the board, is communication. This is really, really key because if people don't see you working, they don't know you're working until you actually turn in your work. There's an uncertainty there, right? So one golden tip I'm going to give you guys is if you're working at home and you're a freelancer, every single day without fail, you give your client an update about what you're working on, even if you're not finished. So your update would be, hi client, today, April 2nd, I accomplished 10 panels on this particular sequence. I'm not done yet. I'm still on target to turn this in by the end of the week. But I just wanted to let you know that there is progress here. If you want to see any of the images, I can send them to you. Signed Sergio and whatever. Like that would be a message. Just really quick, 5 minutes. In fact, you can set up some templates to do that. Send that to your client. You want to keep them in the loop always with your progress because they're paying for your time. And you want to service them like they are the king. Like you just want to kiss their ass and make sure that they feel like they're pampered all the way through. 5-star service from your production work. Okay. One of the ways to do that is communication and remove any doubt about when you're going to get there. Now, if you can't do it every single day for whatever reason, you forget or you just got too busy, well then do it the next day for sure. You might even do it in the morning right away and say, hey, I'm sorry I didn't get to you, client, but I'm still on track. I'm doing these drawings. This is what I have on my plate today, and we're going to get it done. Okay. So you put them at ease when it comes to doing your work, right? That's a really golden tip. It will make the difference from getting the job, keeping the client, and getting referrals and return business because you have really, really serviced your client. Okay. That's a key tip there. Other than that, about like freelancing and keeping things going, your files and everything else should also be treated just as securely as if you're working in the office environment. So you usually have a hard drive that's on your computer. Like I have a desktop here. By the way, you can use a laptop. I'll get to that in a second, and then we'll take some questions here for this little chat. But keep in mind that you want to have redundant copies of your work. So as you're working, either save it to another like drive, or you can even have a portable drive, a whole set of portable USB drives. They're so cheap nowadays. They really are. And this is a production thing. For less than $100, you could have up to like 4 or 5 terabytes. Costco has some great deals on this. And that could be your backup for your work, especially for storyboard work, which is actually not very memory heavy, like JPEG files or Toon Boom files. They're actually not that large. You can fit a ton on one of those USB jump drives, and then you can take it with you, and that's your backup, and you can use that if you're doing a portable setup. So don't just rely on your desktop hard drive. Because there's the other key that you guys got to take away with this. Hopefully you know this, but a little tech tip. Hard drives will fail. Hard drives are guaranteed to fail. Hard drives will fail. So make sure that you know you have a backup, okay? Always have a backup. So just keep that in your mind. It's guaranteed to fail. Just make sure that that's in your mind. So what you need to do is have a backup, have a backup, have a backup. This is how they do it in a studio environment. You're usually plugged into a network. That network is backed up probably almost every day if it's a smart studio. And then you have a multiple back. I would also have a multiple backup on my desktop local computer at my workstation in an office environment. And then if I was really smart, I'd also put a jump drive in there as an extra backup because I don't want to lose any work, any digital work. Okay. So usually in a studio environment, they'll have that set up for you, right? The last thing I want to mention is some other things that you can do. Let me pull this out here. I got in the background is a Cintiq companion tablet. Can you guys see that? Let me pull this out so you know what I'm talking about. This is an older model. I think it's like this is Cintiq Companion 2. I got this from Wacom way back in the day, and it's great. This is I think it's the 12-inch version, if I remember correctly. And it's got HD screen. The newer models are much more fancy and probably have more bells and whistles on them. This one still works. It's an older model. It's great. So think about this as a portable setup. I've used this at my desktop. I've actually taken this to places like Lucasfilm as well and worked there on this machine at the studio because I had to. You can, it's portable. You can take it with you, and that's where your portable hard drive will work as well. This works as a home setup too. It's got a little kickstand. You can put it in there, and you can also connect it to a second monitor if you have. There's a mini port out on this that you can connect it to a second monitor if you want to have like multiple desktop. Really when it comes down to drawing, I love having these tablets. So there's this, and you can do an iPad setup, which is your iPad Pro with a pen. You can also do Microsoft Surface Pro. And these are other computers that have like pens. So any kind of tablet that has like a pen app to it, you can use Procreate or you can do Photoshop on these setups, right? So just a couple other options for home things. The other thing is it doesn't have to be expensive. You can get these like this bad boy. If I were to sell it now, it probably I could probably pick one of these up for like $300-400. Like it's not, and this is still good. It's got an Intel i7 CPU. I think it's got, if I remember correctly, about 8 gigabytes of RAM and 512 hard drive. So hopefully you tech guys out there know what I'm talking about. But that's enough. That's enough power that I need for just my 2D drawings. And this is really good for now for like a portable setup. So that works there too. And any kind of just like basic laptop. You can also go old school style with a Wacom tablet or some kind of like physical tablet that's not the fancy draw on the monitor thing. And you can really go old school with just your sketchbook. Okay, so this is something that if you really needed to, you could like nowadays you just take photos of whatever it is that you're doing and your sketches, and then then scan those in and you're done. Let me see if I got any thumbnails. Most of this is just most of this here are just like random character sketches like this, just doodles. Here, let me get this closer, a little bit closer. It's gonna be hard to see for the bigger monitor, but yeah, that's it. All right. Anyway, you guys got any tips for doing some home studio work? Let me know what you got. Let's share some ideas and see if there's some mutual learning going on. So it's always nice to have somebody tell that. Hey, Anthony, what's up, my friend? Good to see you, buddy. I owe you a phone call. I'm gonna give you a call and we'll chat. So good to see everybody there on Facebook and hitting us up. Let me go to Instagram and see what we got on this. All right, great to see everybody. Hey, James, what's happening? James, Jacquelina, good to see you, buddy. Cool. So obviously you guys are just chilling at home and probably hopefully getting some production work done. And I hope that that this little break in the in the world with the coronavirus is not something you're just gonna like freak out about or take lightly and not do something productive with your time. So I recommend, just as a shameless plug, I recommend you guys come to visualstorycourse.com. Check us out at Storyboard Art and all the social media, and hit us up there because what we have going there is like a really great community. And there's always a ton of questions like, what do I do for storyboard rates? What should I put in my portfolio? How do I actually get in the business and start networking with people? What things should I be studying? How are my drawings? All of those things are things that we talk about and make sure that you know that that you guys got the up and up on this. And the other thing that's really cool is sometimes we're going to learn together. So I don't have all the answers, but out there in the community, there are a lot of people who have like their, they got their ears to the ground. They're out on the street and they got the beat of what's happening. They can fill us in on what's going on with the studios because, as far as I know, even though the coronavirus is down, production is still happening and people are still producing really good work but they're just working from home. They're doing the telecommute thing, even at the big major studios, right? Because production production deadlines don't really shift, which is another crazy thing, right? Um, cool. Yeah, like Anthony here is also just like a pro when it comes to telecommuting, talking to people. The good thing about we're so connected nowadays, and I love it that just from your house and with like a simple camera setup or even your phone, you can use that as a webcam, do FaceTime. Zoom has gotten really popular since this whole Corona thing happened. Um, but there's always been Google Hangouts and Skype, and those are things they're free. It's video chat, and it's super easy to talk to somebody. And it's actually, if you have any doubt about what's going on in your work, you just jump on the phone call and do a FaceTime real quick, get that taken care of, and you can go on back to your work, right? And it also feels like you're being connected with somebody, and that at least they know you're working. You show them your happy smile, and you might tell a joke or two, and then there's like a little bit of connection there. All right, cool. Well, I think this is probably a good place to end this one. If you guys have any questions or any tips that we can share with the group, hit us up on our Facebook group at Visual Storytellers United, and come check us out at storyboardart.org. And then you can also just email us directly through our website there. And yeah, love to see what you're working on too. So if you have any questions, hit us up directly, share some work, and give us a like and share, subscribe on all the social media stuff. All right, friends, stay productive, stay safe out there, and we'll talk soon. Okay, see ya.